Hello and welcome to $10,000 Allie coin TFT tournament, where some of the most popular streamers compete against open qualifier winners. Game number 5.
All the way to 100%. We are looking at Soju, who has started Glove. Glove is a start that I've actually never really made work on this patch, but Soju seems not necessarily favor it, but has liked it a lot. How do you feel about Glove start right now, Mort?
I think Glove Start is okay. One of the reasons, like, if I can get a Last Whisper with a Glove Start, I usually feel really good about it because everyone's running like 2 bodyguards, so that Last Whisper can generally be pretty good. IE is a good secondary, like it's fine to have IE. What I will say is like there are a lot of versions though where it's like if you get the Jeweled Gauntlet or if you end up with like a belt and an armor, you feel a lot worse about that Glove Start. So to me, it's definitely not my favorite choice, but it is an okay one. I'm also like I'm never locking a Thieves Gloves this early. That's just a waste. But it's definitely not my favorite choice.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it as well. He seems to be able to make it work. It feels like it's very narrow in terms of what you can slam, and gloves, like you said, are popular enough that like I don't expect to see him slam this Thieves Gloves. Infinity Edge after the rework is not rework, but nerf. I guess I'm not
Ooh.
really sure how to describe it, but it's definitely lower value. Offered some interesting choices, going with Celestial Blessing to trying to kind of stay flexible and generic here. He does have a couple of Yordles, lacking the third Yordle, but Soju has certainly leaned into the economic traits when they've been made available to him.
So this was a good example of where we talked about first or eighth or ladder style. I think if you look at these items, you see this Infinity Edge plus a glove. It could be a Last Whisper. And you see that Sharpshooter. That Sharpshooter is a lot of value if you can hit the twin shots. And so being open to that possibility, while not the most consistent thing that you would do on ladder, might be worth it in this tournament setting to end up with some ridiculously capped sharpshooter ergot board that could get you that first place in a tournament setting. But I think Soju is a little bit too much on autopilot for how he normally plays. Now, that being said, it is much more his comfort zone. So I understand it. But had he done that, he might have ended up in a higher potential rather than just this generic Celestial Blessing, which is fine. It's mediocre in the early game, but it's not going to win him a late game with a first place.
Yeah, that's exactly true. I'm also really surprised that out of the 3 units he got offered that he wanted to sell the Talon, just because Talon's such a prominent or such a strong early game unit. Will almost always trade 1 for 1. Oftentimes will swing entire fights. So hopping on board with Emily, she has a generically incredibly powerful opening. She has the upgraded Ziggs, upgraded Darius, which for my money is the best single frontliner at 1 cost in the game. And she's got the Yordle, so she's going to be pumping out the economy. Really, really good spot for Emily to start this game.
Yeah, for sure. We talked about how, again, right now the preference is how do you build that extra economy, whether it be through Mercenary or Yordles. Getting the Yordles here, and man, you see the Darius spin there? Getting full value of that Darius here, and even if Emily loses... that's Ziggs, the 1 cost, for sure.
I hate this unit so much more. I mean, it is actually unbelievable. If Scion is the smartest unit that TFT has ever created, I swear Ziggs is the stupidest unit ever created. It feels like it always winds up bombing at the wrong time in the wrong place.
I don't disagree with you, but I will say Ziggs also has 3 traits. Is incredibly valuable, is generating extra economy. If he was the smartest Scion, I think everyone would be playing Ziggs. But yeah, no, I agree with you. He is a very frustrating unit, and watching him just completely whiff that ult feels so bad.
And as you see Emily like very passionately talking to the camera, I envision that she is saying, "Oh my god, this Ziggs unit, I hate this unit so much. I could have easily won that fight. My Darius popped off, and then just because Ziggs missed everything, I lost." So, I think Emily is with me here. Interesting option for her about whether or not she's going to choose to make 10 gold here and sell this Caitlyn. The obvious downside to it is it's her next unit. Caitlyn 2 is really powerful, can preserve a lot of HP, but not making 10 here, it's a really powerful interval to be missing.
Yeah, on the other side, we saw Liquid Robin with Scrapyard, by the way. Scrapyard, one of the best scaling endgame augments you can get at 1-4, because it basically can guarantee you upwards of like 5, 6, even 7 extra components. And that is a lot of extra power. Even if you don't stay in Scrap and you only play 2 Scrap all game, that's still just 7 items of extra power that can be very good compared to, say, extra rerolls, or in Soju's case, a little bit of Omni Vamp. that's just a very good augment to get.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the nice things about that augment too is that there are certain augments, trait-based augments, that early in the game you're like, well, this would be so good, like you said with the train shot with Soju, but like, am I actually gonna get this online in order to be able to make it work? Whereas for scrap, like, in order to get online, you kind of need 2 stars. You need someone to actually carry the items to make it valuable. It's so easy to get scrap online, and you can just play it from lost streak and farm infinite items because there are multiple 1 cost, multiple 2 costs. So it's just so consistent that you're going to get scrap online by 2-1 or worst case scenario 2-2, 2-3. Whereas if you're chasing, I don't know, Kimtex or mercenaries or whatever, it's a lot harder. You're going to need some more expensive units. There are fewer of them in the pool.
Yeah, for sure. So again, Emily, even though it kind of went win, loss, win, still in a pretty good position, generating lots of extra ecom, has to feel pretty good. Also, that trade sector feels like one of the best early game augments because it reliably lets you hit those 2 stars. And we talked earlier about how 2 stars are very reliant on how you preserve your health in the early game. So that's got to feel pretty good. I think Emily's got to be really happy and feeling pretty good about possibly getting a top 4 here as long as they play it well from here on out.
Yeah, absolutely the case. Emily in a really good spot. And I think sometimes when you're playing the Yordles economy where it doesn't snowball based on number of losses in a row, you don't so much mind going win-loss, win-loss. It's a really good spot for her. Hopping on board with Luna, who has that Knife's Edge augment, definitely one of the more generically powerful augments. That extra AD on all of her units is paying a lot of dividends early. She also has very clear direction in this game where you essentially know with the GA slammed in the bow that she wants to play one of 2 comps. She wants to play Urgot or she wants to play Yone, right? She wants to play attack damage-based carries that will use that AD into the late game that will want to be in the front 2 rows.
Yeah, agree. Knife's Edge feels like one of, if not the most, like, advertised augment. It's like, you take this augment, you're playing one of those 2 comps, right? It's like challengers who benefit from that high attack speed and that high AD, or like you said, an Urgot who can be comfortable being placed in that front row and use that high AD to generate lots of value here. I do really like this play from Luna, though, using the early Samira with the GA. Samira benefits a lot from extra AD. Spell scales really well. And so it can be one of the things is that it can get hit pretty hard by like that Talon. But by giving it the GA and the aggro reset, this feels like a nice, healthy use of that GA to keep the Samira alive, get maximum value here, and do some really good damage to get through this early game.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a really interesting moment for Luna because she's at 100 HP. She wants to preserve this streak. She makes a TF2. It doesn't fit where her board is going, right? There's no way this TF2 is going to be played in the long haul, but it is her strongest unit right now. It's certainly better than the Talon one or better than the Swain one. So she elects to make and play the Twisted Fate, and let's see if she's rewarded as she goes against Gloop Glop Gloop Glop, the other player 100 HP, although I will say it looks like a relatively weak board playing 2 Warwick 1s on the board.
Yeah, I will say I kind of disagree here. I probably would have put in the Imperial. I think the Imperial would have made a very large difference here. But thankfully, like you said, rewarded, not punished here, does get that extra value, able to hit 20, feels pretty good there. So either way, worked out.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a little surprised that she is valuing the Clockwork over the Imperial, I guess because she feels like she's selling one of the Imperials. That means that she's not going to play Imperial. She's just getting off of the line entirely. I think it would have been almost impossible to fit Imperial on that fight specifically because she would have had to drop not just Twisted Fate, but the Leona. And I think that Leona as a unit is incredibly strong in the early game, and I think the bodyguard trait is getting a ton of value because there's not a lot of AP-based damage early in the game. AP is something that kind of gets scaled into, whereas every unit is auto-attacking. That's such a meaningful percentage of the damage early. So I definitely get why she's taking the line that she took, and we'll see if it winds up working out for her. She does get very strong items here in a glove and a cloak. She's for sure going to slam either Last Whisper or Runins, and it will be interesting to see what she prioritizes.
Yeah, for sure. I think the big thing to note too is a lot of people, Imperial's not a great endgame comp. And so sometimes you almost want to stay out of Imperial just to not bait yourself into Imperial. So you know what I mean? It's like you don't want to be tempted to play a comp that you know isn't going to work in the end game.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It makes perfect sense, although I do think people sleep on Imperials as a mid-game transitional board. Luna gets a huge hit, by the way. She finds a Braum, which is allowing her to either play the 3 Syndicate with Twisted Fate, or she can play 4 Bodyguards. And to be honest with you, what is better here depends a lot on her pool. If she's running into a bunch of AD-based compositions, then the 4 Bodyguard trade at this stage of the game is insane. If she's running into something that's going to be doing a little bit more AP, or where she's going to get into a War of Attrition style fight, that Twisted Fate 2 can actually do a meaningful amount of damage over the course of the fight. So it will be interesting to see kind of how she approaches her board composition, or if she just chooses to completely stick on this 4 Bodyguard. Bodyguards, I think, a trait that were not undervalued, they just were a little bit weaker than a lot of the other frontline options earlier on the set, and it feels like they're finally in a good spot. Bodyguards as a transition feel really good either in 2 or in 4. 4 Bodyguards feel really good right now.
Yeah, the big thing to note here, and I agree with the decision to go Bodyguard, is that not a lot of people have slammed that last Whisper yet. They might have been waiting for the late game. And 4 Bodyguard especially is really hard to deal with without the last Whisper. And in addition, they get that extra shield, which means they just have even more health. So they just end up having a lot to deal with. And unless your carry is benefiting from the Syndicate, like if they were running Shaco carry, you probably go Syndicate. But because you're running Samira, the Bodyguard just makes so much more sense here and feels really good. Robin, we're turning into Robin here though. 48 health at 3-2. This is definitely one of the lower amounts we've seen all game. Not particularly exciting amount of econ here either. He's only level 630 gold. This is not a impressive board.
Yeah, well, he rolled, right? He rolled a meaningful amount of gold. He's invested 9 gold into this Misfortune 2. He also has 2 extra Tristana, so it'll be very interesting to see. And he finds another Tristana. He just sees, so now he has 6 copies. And so small is an augment that feels really bad overall. But if you can lean into the Yordle tree, it feels less bad. There's also other good reroll options here. So I think very interesting choices, right? You could play underdogs. You can play, if you decide to reroll this Tristana, you're going to play behind units for a meaningful amount of the game. First aid kit actually could be very good in this situation as well if he decides to kind of tech up into Enchanter, Socialites, and all those types of units. So it looks like he does go for the first aid kit. He does have generically powerful items. He has, by the way, 4 completed items at this stage without an he does have an augment. He has the junkyard. So that's where we're seeing the junkyard start to pay dividends. Robin needs to start winning right now though. Like you said, he's not like in a crazy state board wise or economy wise. He cannot afford to keep bleeding HP this early.
Yeah, I agree with the augment choice here. I think the so small would have been a short-term gain, long-term loss, because it means you're kind of stuck with like a Poppy frontline to really take advantage of it. Tristana getting 35% dodge isn't going to change anything. So whereas this is, at least if he can reach late game and get something like the Janna in, the Orianna in, those Enchanter options, the Taric, at least those will be much more valuable in the late game.
Yeah, for sure agree with that. I think First Aid Kit is actually kind of an undervalued augment overall. There are a few high challenger players that value it really, really strongly, but there's a ton of healing and shielding in this set, and a lot of the best units are doing that. Like the Enchanter units are really, really strong. Joy has taken multiple rounds of hits, the Janna, Orianna, Yumi combo, but it's still really, really powerful. The Socialite units, Taric and Seraphine, both engage in a meaningful amount of healing, and those units are very powerful, particularly in the late game. So I think First Aid Kit can add a lot of value to a board. It just isn't quite as, shall we say, sexy as some of the other augments where it's like, Knife's Edge, it's giving me attack damage. I killed faster. I like that.
Yeah, I like it for scrap personally, but okay, there's something I want to check on here, because if this is the cyber variation that is Astro, which is the reduced mana, that is one of the more slept on versions of this comp, where you get the blue buff Malzahar with the 5 mutant, and he can just pump out those dots. And especially with the sniper emblem here, Malzahar is one of the champions that can cast like the max range, and you can get some ridiculous value here. So I want to watch Malzahar's mana and see if this really is that version. And if it is, this could be another first place.
Yeah, so it depends. It would be 1 auto cast if it was, right? So it's not.
No, because you only get 4 mutants, so...
Oh, you're right. 4 mutants. You're absolutely
But it does look like it is the one. So if he can get up to 5 mutant with this blue buff Malzahar, this is going to be insane. The amount of I play a lot of Malzahar for obvious reasons. And, this is the variation that if you can get this variation with a blue buff, that can actually carry to end game, even at 2 stars. So...
Yeah, and Call Flow on an off-level cadence goes to 7 on 3-5, able to make the 20 gold in an incredible spot, having taken that really early Sniper Emblem. And I've been really impressed with his play so far. We've seen him take a ton of different lines. He's played very flexibly in a meta where I think a lot of players outside of, like mismatched socks have really struggled to play that flexibly. He shows off a lot of board fluidity in the paths to getting there. So really, really fun player to watch, and I'm glad he's doing so well in this tournament. It's been a real joy to include in the field, and it's, I think, a real testament to the value of having these open qualifiers. I say as he completely botches his repositioning, and hopefully does not get punished for it.
Nope, doesn't. Yeah, it's really going to come down to, can he find this Mundo quickly? Because again, he needs that 5 mutant to get the instant recast from the Malzahar here. But the Malzahar with Sniper and Morello is just going to give him so much damage. And again, even if it kills something that spreads, like, it is just, you look at that Malzahar damage, and it is disgusting.
And that fight was not close. And Robin has a Yone 2 with 2 items on it on level 6. So that is really showing off the power of this board. He is win streaking for a reason. Very, very clever adaptation from Callflow.
Oh, he got the Mundo. He got it.
I'm not gonna say that you turned on the hacks more, but you did just say out loud. I mean, if only the Mundo would be so fun to see if he could hit it, and then he hit it. So, just saying.
Look, I can neither confirm nor deny what just took place. But what I can say is watch this Malzahar next fight. Let's really watch this Malzahar and just watch the amount of times he casts this dot. It is so much damage.
It's one auto cast. It's the whole thing is one auto.
Oh, it's not.
Cast.
He doesn't have to auto.
Is it really? It's just chain? I thought that the way the animation worked that he had to auto again.
He doesn't have to. It's just the 1.25 second lockout, basically.
Gotcha. I'm with you.
But yeah, just watch this fight, and it is so enjoyable how quickly he casts. As long as he has a survivable frontline, which he does, there's just going to be so much damage. And again, the big thing here is the Sniper Emblem. The Sniper Emblem is actually one of the best items he can get here, because that can go max range. He can get upwards of like 60% extra damage by hitting the backline here.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's watch this.
And because it prioritizes other units, it's it's going to constantly shoot at units further and further away. Oh my god, it's just melting. I mean, this this poor Ramkev board just has absolutely no chance.
Yeah, the amount of DPS this thing provides is so fun. And like I said, this is my favorite version.
And what's fun about this is that you said, as long as he has frontline, and yes, absolutely, especially as the game goes on, he's going to need more frontline, and we're staying up for this to do damage. But Malzahar functionally ended this fight in 5 seconds, right? It casted and basically killed all of Ramkev's board, and it was all over but the death. So at this stage in the game, this board is so powerful that unless he faces someone that has like really powerful 2-star stands they're getting access to kill that Malzahar, then they're going to struggle. And it has self-peel too, because it targets the closest unit, and so it's it's gonna it will apply to the units auto attacking first, but then it will immediately start applying to these sins, and we'll just shred through them.
Yep. So tuning in with Emily here, we see kind of again we see that Tristana early game, level 8, 20 gold. So this is that 4-2 roll down, and it's like, what can we hit at that 4-2 roll down? Hits the Fiora.
Wow.
And so now I think we're gonna have to see how well she can transition into this Fiora version of the comp. Was clearly looking for the Urgot version, but at least the Fiora 2.
Oh my god!
Okay. And
the Kaisa? I mean, I am pivoting into Kaisa from here 100 times out of 100. No!
Did she mean to put that on the Fiora?
She did. She definitely did. Okay.
Yeah. So to explain, I think a lot of the hesitation here is kind of like using it on Fiora is good here, except for the fact she has a Kaisa. Our expectation is that next turn Kaisa goes in, she has 2 Challenger, and Kaisa uses that GA just so much better.
Buy the Taric. Emily, the Taric in your shop, please. Okay, I will say that when we've been talking about Emily earlier, and I was saying that on a patch where she's comfortable, she can be dangerous. But we are watching the weakness to her game right now. It is live playing out before us. She has decided on a path in her head that she is going. She has decided based on absolutely nothing from my perspective, because she can easily play the Kai'Sa and play the mutant variation of Kai'Sa, right? Where she could even like put a blue buff and have this Kai'Sa chain casting if she wanted to. She get a rod and she has BIS Kai'Sa. She already has the Fiora 2. Kai'Sa is the most broken carry in the game. She has upgraded frontline. There is absolutely no reason why she needed to lean into the Urgot version of this board, which is objectively weaker from her spot. And I think it's just that in her head, she is playing Urgot, and so she is going to put these items in a place where she's slowly going to transition into the board that she ultimately wants to play, but it is incorrect, and this is when we talk about taking what the game gives you and adjusting, I promise you, like, Socks, if you were watching this, is like rolling over in his living grave, because she is missing an opportunity to take a different line and a better one because she already had a plan in her head.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I mean, we're even seeing this Fiora with just GA is kind of carrying these fights right now. That being said, not great items for a Fiora carry. Does have a second GA now for a Kai'Sa, but do you look for Fiora items here? If you could get a Morello or an Archangel for that Kai'Sa, at least getting in 2 Challenger, like even just Kai'Sa for Gangplank right now feels like such
better.
an obvious switch to at least get that Fiora the Challenger. But we'll have to see if that plays out or where she ends up from here on out.
Yeah, for sure. Hopping on board with Robin, who has the RFC version of Yone. This version, I mean, the RFC can keep safe, and it's going to put a real premium on positioning, because this can be scary if the Yone gets rolling, but in order to get rolling, he needs to make sure it's positioned in front of a unit. No Last Whisper, so you're not going to get through a tank, and no Runin, so you're not going to get the value of spreading in the same way that you otherwise would. So it's a build that can work, far from BIS, but definitely functional. Actually, sorry, he does have the rune, so he does have that spread, but with no Last Whisper, we need to make sure that we're not getting stuck onto very tanky units. And this is, kind of an embarrassment of riches. We've got, Gloop Glop, who has 2 Yones, is trying desperately to get a Yone 2, and here is Robin with 2 Yone 2s on the board.
Yeah, the big thing to note is Yone is one of the champions that is more flexible with items, and I do like the, out at 4-5, that feels real bad. Don't even get to see your last augment choice. But Yone with RFC in particular gets a ton of attack speed from that RFC. I think a lot of people forget just how much upfront attack speed that gives you. And I think it's really good if you're playing the Deep Academy version of the Yone, because that way you've got the AD that can be supported by the attack speed. I think when you're running this version, though, and you don't have that much high base AD, and like you said, no Last Whisper, I think that's where this is going to really struggle.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, and I think Robin knows it. I think Robin feels like he's in playing for top 4 mode, if at all possible. He's not loving these augment choices either. He's gonna grab the scrap and just tech down to 2 scrap, it looks like, and then see if he can find better units for his board. Either go up in academies or go up in challengers. So there we have the 4 challengers. But man, talk about unit quality. A Warwick 1 for Yone 2 always hurts.
This is a great example of, I think, a hard decision for a lot of players, right? It's like, do you put in this Warwick 1 so that you have 4 Challenger, or do you put in a second Yone 2 because it's a second Yone 2, And I think a lot of people really struggle with that decision.
Yeah, absolutely. And he also had the possibility of maybe removing this cat. Obviously, he really does value the Academy for the exact reason you were talking about, but again, Yone 2 in terms of unit quality is just so much higher than Cat 2. So very, very tough spot for Robin going up against kind of the more traditional version of the board with the GA on the Yone. And you're seeing why that GA on the Yone does so much work, because there is this Yone dead, but its clone very much alive and doing damage and ultimately swinging the fight. So that's why that item unit combination can be so, so powerful. Scouting around, taking a look, as we do see a Clapio board. That is a 2-star Galio in stage 4, Mort.
That is pretty good to see. You have the 2-star Galio. We haven't seen much of that all tournament, but it is very capped. That being said, Ramkev has 6 health, so he cannot lose a round from this point on with that Galio board. So we'll have to see what the rest of his supporting cast is around the Galio. But if he can get that with like a 3 Socialite, get a Scion in there, I've seen those Galios just like win the game from here on out, because Galio does a surprising amount of damage.
Yeah, absolutely. Galio, even after a couple rounds of nerfs, can be made to work, especially if you're able to get this early and kind of snowball out. A Zeke's and a Redemption is likely what I'm seeing here. Robin rolling down, seeing if he can get some upgraded frontline units. That Braum 2 would be a massive hit if he can find it. Obviously, would love to find 3 more copies of Yone, potentially. Okay, he makes the Seraphine 2. I'd love to see how he's gonna fit this in. Okay, so he immediately
Instantly
sells
sells
it.
it.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that makes sense. I was like, I don't know where that goes, but I'm gonna be curious to see. Okay, so it looks like we're gonna tech up an Academy if at all possible. Gets a Scholar and Braum 2, huge hit. And we're gonna stop there for now. So okay, so now we need to get the Zeke's in. If he's gonna go for that, he's gonna go for Warmog's show. Okay, Zeke's cool. Okay, that makes perfect sense. The Zephyr comes through, and that's his front line. Really clean micro from Soju, an excellent micro player. Going up though, carrying a Trundle 2. So this is a good matchup for Robin. I think a nice time to be playing Soju, who still has 30 gold and isn't quite spiked yet.
Yeah, the one thing that really helped, by the way, there, that at least made Soju take a little less damage, was he Zephyred the Braum, which made the Enforcer then move on to Yone. Otherwise, the Enforcer would have hit the Braum. And so that was a nice pass-off to just at least try to minimize the damage. Because as I said, he's running Trundle 2. There's no way he's winning fights from here. We can kind of see he's in this awkward position where he's trying to figure out if he's going Jhin.
Yep.
He clearly wants to go Urgot. Urgot's been very popular this entire tournament. We talked about it pretty much all day. Where if you can get this Chemtech going and you can get that Urgot, he just takes so little damage.
One more.
Yep.
Okay, last second reposition, playing around with this Zephyr and going up against Callflow, who has been disgusting on this Malzahar. Let's take a look at the same build about a full stage later more, and it seems to still be working out for him, topping the lobby in HP.
Yeah, he did lose a few fights, but again, you can just see just how much damage this thing puts out. It is just nutty.
Yeah, for sure. So impressive, and you know the other boards have scaled, but so has his. He's got the upgraded Braum, the upgraded Mundo, and just tons and tons of frontline.
Yeah, looking at the health right now, we see Robin really struggling now. Hasn't hit that Yone. Ramkev's still alive with that Galio 2. That's got to feel good. But top of the lobby is this Mal's 2 with the mana reduction. Soju desperately looking for, at least is going to play the Fiora for now.
Yep.
That'll work until he hits his Urgot, so at least that's something. But yeah, you can kind of see, and this is one of the nice things about this meta right now, is this willingness to sort of like, okay, which of the carries am I going to hit? Let me try to play around that here, right? And so at least he's got Enforcer. He's willing to play this Fiora until he hits the Urgot. And so it at least allows for some skilled flex play here that we're seeing here. And the Last Whisper is going to do some good work here, and you see that ult is just going to do a ton of damage. It's just is Fiora going to get CC'd, and she doesn't, and right back to almost full health. Ascension kicks in, and now at this point it's very difficult to win a fight once Ascension kicks in.
Yeah, and we're seeing Goose struggle on Arcanist. We saw him have a really good Arcanist game a couple of games back, but that was when he had 3 Arcanist emblems, and so just a much different board state from where he's at now. Goose drops down very low, actually, and out in 5th place. We have Ramkev on a 6 HP win streak, and then we have 4 players that are, kind of light years above the rest, all at 40 plus HP, and all trying to figure out what they're going to do and how they're going to turn their top 4 into a top 1.
Yeah, and this is where we don't see a Malzahar 3 on Callflow's board, so he's going to start falling off a little bit here. I haven't seen anything particularly strong, but really across the board, like no one seems like they've hit their optimal choices. It just seemed like good aggressive play early on. Soju does get a Challenger spat here, which allows him to go to Challenger. Yep. It does make me wonder if he's actually going to stay this Challenger route now, or maybe even go Urgot Challenger. But also with Robin out, all those Yones are back in the pool. So he may be able to get a Yone here, may be able to stabilize. But actually, of all the people in the situation right now, Ramkev feels like the one that might just be a little ahead of everybody else.
Yeah, for sure. For now, it feels like the board stays there. I mean, last time we were on Emily's board, I think there was a ton of potential power there, so it'd be interesting to check back in and see how she's doing. Also, if Callflow is able to hit maybe a Malzahar 3, right, then all of a sudden that board becomes terrifying, or gets a dual carry Kaisa online. So a lot of potential. We're also looking at Luna's board for the first time in a while. She is actually all the way at level 9, something that is not easy to accomplish in this meta, and she is making it work with that really powerful BIS build on Yone 3. She's got the Last Whisper to make sure she cuts through the tanks. She got the Runins to make sure that she applies damage to multiple targets and gets those Challenger resets faster. She's got the Guardian Angel, both to keep it alive and to keep the DPS from the clone alive. And she's got that Kaisa with Guardian Angel. So really, really powerful board from Luna. And it has to be said, I mean, she can play some strategy games, right? I mean, she is a beast at Hearthstone and a beast at TFT as well. So fun to see her popping off in this tournament. Okay, so we're back on board with Emily, who is playing a hybrid board. This is a really cool board that she's put together. We've got the Urgot 2, with the kind of really good items. Last Whisper to shred, Guardian Angel to stay alive, Guardian Urgot also will continue and ult through Guardian Angel, and Static Shiv, which is kind of like a bootleg Runin's Hurricane, if you will, and then has a couple of other items onto this Fiora. Does wind up playing the Kai'Sa, though not itemized, so still some potential power on her board.
So Luna hit the Kai'Sa 2, by the way. So Luna, level 9, Deep Challenger, Kai'Sa 2, Yone 2, really good items. Definitely looking like a favorite. Here we get a chance to see how Emily, you mentioned it earlier, clearly wanted to play Urgot, got the Urgot, is playing Urgot. We get to see how this does against the Malzahar board. But again, that Malzahar board, I keep telling you, that blue buff, just passing out the damage. And again, it's a little slow, and this is where it starts to fall off, but it's still doing a lot of damage for, frankly, a 3-cost 2-star. So really going to be curious to see if he can hit the 3-star Malzahar. It looks like he's at 7 Malzahars across on the other side. So if he can get those last 2, we should see a big spike.
Yeah, absolutely. And this Chemtech emblem is potentially very powerful for Emily. Either allows her to drop a Chemtech or potentially go up to 5 Chemtechs when she gets to level 9 if she wants to go that path. Looking around the lobby, I mean, we've got Cauliflo, who has a lot of potential power left in terms of capping out his board and getting to that Malzahar 3, which would be really scary. Luna's board is already insane and definitely the favorite to win. I think Emily has a lot of potential power as well if she's able to get Fiora 3 or Kai'Sa 2, maybe move some items around a little bit depending on what she winds up hitting. And I think Soju is the very clear outlier for me. I have no idea how Soju is going to do any better 4th place in this game, but we'll see if he's able to pull it off.
The Tahm Kench 2 here is nice. Might generate some extra items now. Tahm Kench 2 doing a lot more damage. And we see it. Malzahar 3, by the way, was just hit.
Love it.
So Malzahar 3 with the blue buff and the Astro version of Mutant. This is going to be so much damage. And every time it kills something, it splits off into 2. It generates another copy of itself. Now, the one weakness to this can be if you go up against high health, high magic resist enemies, they can all have the dot and be surviving. And that's how you can beat that comp. So it's not like it's a foolproof comp, but it is a very high DPS comp.
Yeah, absolutely. And Emily going up against Soju's board, that definitely feels like the weaker, though he does have Ascension and a BT here, but there is enough anti-heal and Soju's going down. I really like the bench organization here from Emily, by the way. A little cheeky, but she's separating her Fioras, trying to stop people from recognizing that she's going for that Fiora 3 win condition. Moving on board with Cauliflo, let's take a look at this Malzahar Sniper 3, a board that I have never seen before, but man, am I happy to be seeing it.
I love this board. Also, has the other thing to note here is it has Stand United, so that's giving the Malzahar some base AP that it didn't have. So that's really good. But if you're going to beat it, Zephyr's another way to beat it really well. Interestingly enough, though, kind of looks like was winning the fight without the Malzahar.
Yeah, I think that he was winning the fight without the Malzahar. This Bramble Vest Ionic Spark Mundo was just way too much for that Fjord to ever get through. I don't know. I mean, maybe if you take Malzahar off the board, he loses, but he could have spotted Soju another 5 or so seconds, no Malzahar, and probably ultimately got the job done. Now, the real question is, will Malzahar 3 be enough to deal with Luna's outrageously capped out version of challengers?
Yeah, interestingly enough, by the way, Ramkev went out in 5th with that Galio comp. Yep. We didn't really get a chance to see it, but that's kind of sad to see, so I'm curious, maybe just didn't have enough supporting units around it. Also might struggle with like this Malzahar, so we'd have to see. Was trying to switch in the Galio, didn't quite get that in right, but let's see how the Malzahar goes here. No Zephyr this time. Oh, but it gets enforced! Yeah, oh, man, so no matter what.
And that's all the damage, and this board, Emily's board, has much more damage than Soju's does. Yep. So you can spot the Malzahar against Soju's board, but you cannot spot it against Emily's board. She's able to mow through that front line.
Yeah, and if Malzahar doesn't have time to get started, that's how you're going to win these fights. And so you're seeing kind of the power of like Enforcer, right? 2 Enforcer being very valuable. It's almost to Kelfla's advantage to try to like get something like a Warmogs on the Mundo, just to try to pull it away so that it can be the Enforcer target.
Yeah, and really smart, by the way, denying Emily, like, feels like he's playing for 2nd place here because Luna's board is so strong, denies Emily the Jinx too and takes this Titans. I don't think that he particularly valued the Titans item, but I think he recognizes that Emily's board gets a lot stronger with the Jinx too and says, okay, then the best move for me here is to deny it, try to play to preserve HP, but there we go. We see Emily actually hits the Jinx 2 anyway, so nice try, but not good enough. Emily's board starting to cap out. I'm not sure it's going to be good enough to beat Luna's board. Luna's board is just so strong, but Emily putting herself in excellent place to potentially go second, even in this incredibly powerful lobby.
Yeah, I mentioned it though. It kind of might have been a misplay though, because you could have taken the Warmogs, put
Yeah.
it on like a Braum, and that way the Braum would have been enforced, not the Malzahar. This Malzahar is just sitting enforced way too long, up against challengers that just tear through the damage. And yeah, Luna just destroys that comp. Is it a double kill? Is what it's going to be the $1,000,000 question here? Nope. So we got Emily versus Luna here.
Yeah, Emily versus Luna. I would love to know which board Emily was able to beat there, but we saw it looks like Emily has moved some of her Fiora items onto this Jinx 2, and Jinx 2 obviously just a better unit than Fiora at the end of the game, and so really, really good adaptation from her. This is such a tough board to position against. This is when you're playing against challengers, it's all about stopping the resets from the Yone in particular, and so you need to make sure you get a tank in front of the Yone. If you can get the Tahm Kench in front of the Yone and actually have it eat the Yone and stall it out, then that can make the difference between winning and losing a fight. So we see Luna repositioning that Yone all the way to the far right, and let's see if Emily is able to anticipate it. She doesn't. It does look like Emily is like Luna's getting exactly.
There's the reset.
Fight. The resets are coming in so powerful. Yone is just absolutely obliterating this board. The Kaisa is casting, and it looks like Emily is going to lose this fight. Is it fatal? It is. Yep. And that is a clean lobby win from Luna.